There's a kind of silence that lives in old homes. Not the emptiness of abandonment, but the quiet hum of memory, of choices made, words left unspoken, and love that once filled every corner. This house knows that silence. And so do I. My name doesn't matter much anymore. What matters is what I learned in these walls. What I endured. What I survived. I've lived in this house for 43 years. I raised my son here. I buried my husband from this doorstep. I planted the jasmine by the window that blooms every spring, filling the air with sweetness. I no longer feel the same way. This home was my sanctuary, my kingdom, my heart in brick and wood. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like mine. It started so slowly, I didn't even notice at first. Little things. A tone of voice. A dismissive glance. The way she'd rearrange my kitchen without asking, as if my way of doing things for decades suddenly didn't matter. The way she'd smile at me in front of my son, then let that smile drop the moment he looked away. Her name is Kavya, my daughter-in-law. And for the longest time, I told myself I was imagining it. I remember the day my son brought her home for the first time. He was glowing, so proud, so in love. And I was happy for him. Truly, I was. I welcomed her with open arms, with sweets and blessings and every bit of warmth a mother could offer. I thought we'd be close. I thought she'd become the daughter I never had. How foolish I was. In the beginning, she played her part perfectly. She called me Ma. She touched my feet every morning. She'd sit beside me and ask about recipes, about my late husband, about my son's childhood. She laughed at my stories. She seemed genuine. But people reveal themselves in time. And time, as patient as it is, always tells the truth. The first crack appeared about 8 months after the wedding. It was small, almost forgettable. We were in the kitchen, and I was showing her how I made my son's favorite lentil soup, the one with cumin seeds tempered just right, the way my mother taught me. She watched for a moment, then smiled. "That's nice, Ma," she said. "But I think he likes it better the way I make it now." It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like she was erasing me, rewriting years of love with a single sentence. I laughed it off. I didn't want to seem possessive or old-fashioned. So I stepped back. I let her take over the kitchen. I let her make the soup her way. And my son, he ate it and said nothing. That's when I realized something I should have known sooner. My son had begun to drift. Not suddenly, not cruelly, but slowly, like a boat untied from its dock, floating into deeper waters where I could no longer reach him. He started coming home later. He stopped asking me how my day was. When I'd speak, he'd glance at his phone. When I'd suggest something, anything, he'd wait for Kavya's opinion before deciding, as if mine no longer mattered. I told myself it was natural. He's a married man now. He has his own life, his own priorities. A wife comes first. But a mother never stops being a mother. And deep inside, I felt it. The slow, creeping coldness. The distance growing between us, one day at a time. Dinners became quieter. The laughter that once filled this table faded into polite conversation, then into silence. Kavya would serve the food, and I'd sit there, in my own home, feeling like a guest. An outsider. And whenever I tried to speak up, to reclaim even a small piece of my place here, she had a way of making me feel like I was the problem. "Ma, you're overthinking. Ma, don't be so sensitive. Ma, it's just a joke. Why are you upset?" Gaslighting. That's what they call it now, isn't it? I didn't know the word back then, but I felt it. Every single day. She never yelled. She never caused a scene. That would have been too obvious. No. Kavya was smart. She was calculated. She chipped away at me in whispers, in small dismissals, in silent gestures that made me question my own feelings. And my son, he saw nothing. Or maybe he chose not to see. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, reading. Kavya walked in with her phone pressed to her ear, laughing with someone. She glanced at me, then turned and walked into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Not a word. Not even a nod. I sat there, staring at that closed door, and for the first time, I felt invisible in my own home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every conversation, every little hurt I'd quietly swallowed. And I wondered, was I being too sensitive? Was I holding on too tightly? Was I the one in the wrong? No, I wasn't. Because a few days later, something happened that changed everything. I was cleaning the study, my late husband's old room, where we kept files, papers, family albums. I was dusting the shelves when I noticed something odd. A drawer that was usually locked was slightly open. I hesitated. I'm not the type to snoop, but something in my gut told me to look. Inside, I found papers, legal documents, my property deed, my husband's will, things that should have been untouched, filed away safely for years. But they weren't in order. Pages were missing. Some were photocopied, and tucked between them was a handwritten note, in Kavya's handwriting. It was a list. Property details, bank account numbers, legal terms I didn't fully understand. And at the bottom, underlined twice, asterisk, transfer, sole name, asterisk. My hands trembled. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst through my chest. She was planning something. Something that involved my home, my assets, my life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her right then and there. But I didn't. Because I realized something in that moment. Something that would define everything that came next. If I reacted now, if I let my emotions take over, I'd lose. She'd twist it. She'd make me look paranoid, jealous, bitter. She'd turn my son against me even more. No, I had to be smarter than that. I carefully put everything back exactly as I found it. I closed the drawer. I walked out of that room with my heart racing and my mind spinning, but my face calm, because I had just made a decision. I would let her think she was winning. I would watch. I would wait. I would gather every piece of evidence I needed. And when the time was right, I would take back everything. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to pretend. I had to smile when I wanted to cry. I had to stay silent when I wanted to scream. I had to watch my daughter-in-law move through my home like she already owned it, and say nothing. But I wasn't idle. Oh no, I was building my case. I started paying closer attention. I watched who she called. I listened when she thought I wasn't nearby. I noticed when she'd take my son aside and whisper things I couldn't hear, but I could see the way his face changed afterward. The way he'd look at me with doubt. She was poisoning him. Slowly, carefully, turning him into her weapon. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. Kavya was on the phone in the bedroom. I was walking past when I heard my name. No, she's not going to be a problem much longer. Trust me. Once the paperwork goes through, it's done. She'll have no claim. And honestly, she's getting old. She won't even fight it. I froze. My whole body went numb. She wasn't just planning to take my property. She was planning to erase me from it entirely. To make it look legal, official, irreversible. And she thought I was too old, too weak, too broken to stop her. That's when I felt it. Not sadness. Not fear. Rage. A quiet, cold, calculating rage that settled deep in my bones and refused to leave. I went to my room. I locked the door. And I made a phone call. Hello, is this Advocate Mehra's office? Yes. I need to speak with him. It's urgent. Advocate Rajesh Mehra was an old family friend. He'd handled my husband's will years ago, and I trusted him completely. When I explained the situation, calmly, Clearly, with every detail I could remember, he listened in silence. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Mrs. Sharma, you're not the first mother-in-law to sit in my office with this story. And you won't be the last. But you're one of the few who caught it in time." He explained the law. He explained what Kavya was likely attempting: forging documents, manipulating records, possibly even using my son's name to authorize transfers I'd never agreed to. "But here's the good news," he said. "If she hasn't filed anything yet, we still have time. We can protect your assets. And if she does file, we'll have proof of forgery. That's a criminal offense." I felt a weight lift off my chest. Not all of it, but enough to breathe again. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just let her continue. Don't confront her. Don't let her know you're aware. Let her make her move. And when she does, we'll be ready." I nodded. I thanked him. And I left that office feeling something I hadn't felt in months: hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Kavya's behavior escalated. She started treating me like a servant. She'd leave her dishes in the sink and expect me to clean them. She'd invite her friends over without telling me, and I'd find my living room full of strangers, laughing and chatting as if I didn't exist. One evening, she even changed the locks on the main door. I came home from the market, and my key didn't work. I stood there, staring at that door, bags in hand, feeling humiliation burn through my chest. I knocked. I waited. Finally, my son opened the door. "Oh, Ma, sorry." Kavya said the old lock was broken. She got it fixed. "Fixed?" I repeated. "Without telling me?" He looked uncomfortable. "She probably forgot. Don't make a big deal out of it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him everything. But I didn't. I just walked inside, put my bags down, and went to my room. Because I knew the trap was closing. And soon, very soon, it would snap shut. The day finally came. It was a Thursday morning. I was in the kitchen when Kavya walked in, holding a folder. She looked different, confident, almost giddy. "Ma," she said sweetly, "can we talk?" I dried my hands and turned to face her. "Of course." She sat down at the table and opened the folder. Inside were documents, legal papers, and at the top, a will. My will, or at least, a version of it. "I found this while cleaning," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "And I just wanted to make sure everything was in order. You know, for the future." I looked at the paper. It was a forgery. A very good one. But a forgery nonetheless. It stated that I, in sound mind, was transferring full ownership of the house and all assets to my son and daughter-in-law. And in the event of my death, everything would go solely to Kavya. My name was signed at the bottom. But it wasn't my signature. I looked up at her. She was watching me carefully, waiting for my reaction. And I smiled. "Oh," I said softly. "I don't remember signing this." She blinked. "You did, Ma. A few months ago. You were tired. Maybe you forgot." "Maybe," I said. Her eyes flickered with something. Relief? Victory? "Well," she said, standing up, "I'll keep this safe. Just in case." She walked out of the kitchen, folder in hand, and I sat there in silence. Because she had just made her move. And now, it was my turn. I called Advocate Mehra that same afternoon. "She showed me the document," I said. "Good," he replied. "That means she's confident. Overconfident. Now we wait for her to file it. And when she does, we strike." "How long?" I asked. "Not long. If she's smart, she'll file within the week." He was right. 3 days later, I received a notice in the mail. A legal notice stating that ownership of my property was being transferred due to an updated will. I read it once, twice. Then I picked up the phone. Advocate Mera, she filed it. Perfect, he said. Now we go to court. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Kavya walked around the house like a queen, smiling at me with that same false sweetness. My son was quieter than usual, sensing something was wrong but not knowing what. I didn't tell him. Not yet. Because I wanted him to see it. I wanted him to witness the truth with his own eyes. The day of the hearing arrived. I dressed carefully. I wore my best sari, the one my husband bought me on our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look strong, dignified. Kavya wore sunglasses and a designer suit. She looked like she was attending a business meeting, not a court hearing. My son sat between us, confused and anxious. The judge entered. We rose. And the case began. Advocate Mera presented the facts calmly and clearly. He showed the original will, the real one, filed years ago, with my actual signature verified by a notary. He showed the forged document Kavya had submitted, with a signature that didn't match. He brought in a handwriting expert who testified that the signature was fake. He presented phone records, showing calls between Kavya and a man who'd been previously convicted of document forgery. And then, he played a recording. It was Kavya's voice. Clear as day. Asterisk, once the paperwork goes through, it's done. She'll have no claim. Asterisk. The courtroom went silent. I looked at Kavya. Her face had gone pale. Her hands were trembling. My son stared at her in disbelief. Kavya, he whispered. What is this? She opened her mouth, closed it, tried to speak. It's not, she's lying. This is all a misunderstanding. But the judge raised his hand. Mrs. Kavya Sharma, he said firmly, you are being charged with forgery, fraud, and attempted theft of property. This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with criminal charges. She broke. She started crying, screaming, blaming me, blaming my son, saying she did it for us, for our future, that I was old and didn't need the house anyway. But no one was listening. My son sat frozen, his face in his hands. And I just sat there, calm, steady, because I had won. The legal process took months, but in the end, justice was served. Kavya was convicted. She was ordered to pay restitution and serve a suspended sentence. She was banned from entering my property. My son, he didn't speak to me for weeks. He was angry, hurt, ashamed. But one evening, he came to my room. He sat on the edge of my bed and cried. I'm sorry, Ma, he whispered. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. I held his hand. You were in love. Love makes us blind sometimes. I almost lost you, he said. But you didn't, I replied. I'm still here. And I was. Today, the house is quiet again. But it's a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of secrets. Not the silence of fear. It's the silence of peace. I sit by the window where the jasmine blooms. I sip my tea. I watch the morning light spill across the floor. And I smile. Because I learned something through all of this. Strength isn't loud. It isn't violent. It isn't revenge. Strength is patience. It's clarity. It's knowing when to fight and when to wait. And sometimes, strength is simply refusing to disappear. This house is mine. This life is mine. And no one will take that from me again. My name is Mrs. Rama Sharma. And this is my story.